Well, hello everyone. This is Keith Bell, your professor in cultural geography, and I wanted to take just a little bit of time to work with you about the history of geography and how I can make the claim it's the mother of all sciences, as you see here on this slide. So this is just a little bit of historical perspective to get you to the point of understanding how we're going to look at culture and culture across this planet. So the first person I need to introduce you to is a guy named Eratosthenes. This guy lived, as you can see, he's kind of his time frame for his life in the map he created, but he's a Greek mathematician, philosopher, geographer, and everything else. If you consider, you've heard of Plato and Socrates and all these different philosophers. He's doing the same thing, but they are really incredible in the way in which they go about understanding the world, disseminating information, collecting information too. So when you consider that, take a look at what this guy did. One, he gets to be the father of geography because he created the word. So you can see it's about writing about the world, but a bit too simplistic of a definition, but nonetheless, that's what it means, when we look at geography as a spatial science. If you look at history, it's a temporal, a science or a temporal look at the changes on Earth or with people. That he uses mathematics, geometry, that is to measure the Earth, geo, and I'm going to show you a slide about that in just a second, and also really giving us an understanding of how to pinpoint places mathematically, and that is through latitude and longitude. Okay, so let's look forward here and see what he was able to do. This is his map that he created, and as you can see, it's 2,200 years before, or excuse me, 220 years before Christ. This is how we measure time with AD, Anno Domini. But anyway, when we look at this map, this is incredibly detailed. If you're not used to looking at it, let's see. So I think my highlighter's here. I hope you're seeing it. But here we are with Europe, the British Isles out here. They know about Iberia, Spain and Portugal, the boot of Italy. Everything around the Mediterranean is really solid, especially where he and his Greek companions are located here. We've got the Tigris and Euphrates River with this leading to the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Peninsula, the Red Sea, Northern Africa. And then you start to see it kind of cut off here. They don't know much about this. So the geographers at that time were kind of seeing how their society flourished in Greece and around the area of the Mediterranean, and they figured, well, it's intolerably hot here in the desert, the Libyan desert, what we call the Sahara Desert today. So they called it a torrid zone where nothing really good can happen. Equally, up here in the far north, they called it a frigid zone where the Vikings, the barbarians were. So they thought, environmentally speaking, that this is where all the smart people are going to be. And it's deductive logic and reasoning that they would think that. They certainly knew. He knows about India. Alexander the Great would come here. This is the known world to them, and this is very accurate rendering, just so that you're aware. When we look here at this is not to get into the math, but to let you understand how he was able to accurately measure the globe itself, and that is he had two pinpoint positions on the Earth, and knowing that if you have a wedge of a piece of pie, you know how big that piece of pie is. This is what this guy was able to do. So he didn't miss it by a whole lot, maybe a few hundred, I don't know, maybe it was like 100 miles or something like that. He got it. We didn't know this until the 20th century with satellite technology, how accurate, he really was. But measuring the bottom of a well and measuring the sun angles and shadows, this is what he was able to accomplish. And this would also kind of lead to our understanding of how big the Earth is. And as you know, it rotates on its axis. So the bulge of the Earth around the equator is actually bigger than it's longer around the equator than it is to go pole to pole. And it's that centrifugal force, and what we really are on is an oblate spheroid. And when you see the scientists and navigators and others in the past talk about the planet being kind of like an apple, or not an apple, a pear, that it's fatter around the middle, this is their real solid understanding of what the planet dynamics were. And I would like to go ahead and throw this out there to you. If you've ever been a flat earth thinker, look back over 220 or 2,200 years ago, sorry for my math, but they knew it was a ball at that point. When did they ever think it was flat? I'm not hiding anything from you. They don't think it was flat. So we can laugh about it, but if anybody has flat earth thinkers in their family, don't try to teach them. They don't want to know. All right, moving forward, here's another guy for you. This is an Arab, and I introduce him because he was a very important geographer. You can just call him Al-Idrisi. He has a very, very, very long name because of the way they did familial, paternal, lineage. But this guy right here, why I wanted to show you this is because I needed you to know that when we talk about the Middle Ages in Europe, and you've had a Eurocentric education, a lot of our newer ideas in the West had to come from Arab Muslims, and they held the lamp of education and knowledge when Europe was in her dark ages and killing people for religious reasons and whatnot. What's important here too, do you notice the orientation of the map? There used to be East used to be at the top of the maps in the dark ages, the Middle Ages in Europe, because the East was, this is how they oriented stuff with Jerusalem in the middle. Look at how they Al-Idrisi has it. This is the Mediterranean right here. So, you've got the layout here from the Iberian Peninsula to the Arabian Peninsula and out to India. But south is at the top of the map. So there is no right way up when we look at something. If the thing is in all its relations on this map, it doesn't matter which way it's pointed or how it's oriented, that is to say east, it's still accurate. We only use north at the top now because we have magnetic poles, and so we're okay with orienting the map with north at the top. Here's another geographer, mostly actually known though as a philosopher. Immanuel Kant was quite pivotal in re-encapsulating what geography would be. It couldn't necessarily be all of the world's knowledge together. That's just too much to wrestle with. But classifying things by place gets us to the concept of a regional geography, and defining geography again not as a compendium of everything we know about all of planet Earth and everybody on it, but a better way of analyzing those things to understand those places better. And so this is a really a pivotal fellow of many of the geographers, and you're going to get the tune here that all of them are German, and that is somewhat true, you guys. So this is probably the greatest geographer ever. His name is Alexander von Humboldt, and he just had a biography written about him a year or so ago by Andrea Wolf that won incredible accolades. This guy he's so popular and so well known and so was so ubiquitous for a time being. There's nobody on planet Earth that has more stuff named after him than Humboldt. There's even a place in Tennessee named Humboldt. There's Humboldt, California. There's in this area right here, there's a current named for him. He spent a lot of time in South America understanding the Orinoco River, the Andes Mountains, and more. He did all kinds of stuff in Russia and Prussia. He was feted in Washington, D.C. He was a rock star, and this is the guy. This is his map he drew, by the way, of isotherms, that is, these lines connecting all places of equal temperature. This is a climate map he developed. So the Germans were quite pivotal, and I've left out some too. Karl Ritter's another big German name in geography, but whereas he was a university professor, it was Alexander von Humboldt, what we would tend to think of as a muddy boots geographer, a guy in the field collecting data and trying to understand that data. If we take it up into the 20th century here, this is an American geographer. He's not necessarily the most popular guy or the most well written, but why I wanted to bring him to your attention is how he looked at the Central axis that is geography and how it relates with all these other things. So in your chapter 2, you'll look at geography and you'll look at meteorology, but when we put the short-term weather phenomena with the spatial aspect of places, we would look at a climate, say, of Tennessee, which is a humid mid-latitude subtropical setting, a CFA. We'll look at this in chapter 2 as well with another German geographer who built your climate map. I apologize. That's for a different class, but we will talk about physical geography. I'm sorry about that. But to understand that it is history and politics, that it's economics, that it's all of this. It's central themes here. So think about this. The all-encompassing nature of geography, its bulk, its behemoth, is kind of in contrast to how all the sciences, if it's the mother, how all the sciences broke away and started looking at smaller and smaller and smaller things, chemistry, biology, mathematics, of humans and culture. All of this, geography looks at it in scales and ranges of understanding. And so this is a pretty important understanding that puts you back in the middle of this thing. So to tell you further here's another guy named Karl Ortwin Sauer, another German geographer, but he goes to Cal Berkeley. He's going to define the cultural aspect of geography and move it away from what was leaning toward environmental determinism. Now, he is going to found the Berkeley School, and he, with his Morphology of Landscape, this seminal article that he had, and he was 40 different geographers and their PhDs were built upon his work. So he is a real defining name in cultural geography. And so moving away from environmental determinism or social Darwinism, does the environment tell you everything about the people? That's how we thought about it. Again, the torrid zone of, say, Africa, it's too hot, it's too dry, nobody's ever going to be able to work their way up from that. Same thing for the barbarians in the north. It's just too cold and dark up there. They're never going to see the light of knowledge. But that's not necessarily true. It does have an impact, but it then minimizes the creative and synergistic nature of humans to redefine themselves in places. Okay, so when we look through in chapter 1 and you see environmental determinism and possibilism and these ideas defined, we want to look at here and not take out the very important point of what humans are able to do. The discussion now is how in globalization, guys, that I'm running long here. I'm sorry, and I'm jumping over some stuff, so I may have to cut this short. But take a look at what your textbook is saying here about these 5 things that we're going to look at and how culture presents itself. And culture now, we tend to look at humans as the prime mover and shaker of all events that are happening on planet Earth. Do we influence storms with global warming and our burning of fossil fuels? Did these recent the hurricanes that have hit in the United States that have been incredibly destructive, have we had a role in playing? Did we play a role in making those that way? So when we look at Earth, there's very little, honestly. Even if we haven't seen it, doesn't mean we haven't affected it. We have geographers and environmentalists and all looking in Antarctica to count how many little microscopic plastic particles are locked up in the surface of the snow and ice there. We know that even the smallest of little zooplankton have consumed plastic. So when we tend to think about the role of humans in nature and on this planet, that contemporary human geography is going to go through all levels of spatial interaction of people across places and within environments. And I know this is brief and a little rushed, but this is my introduction to you about what this class is going to be. I'll come back with another lecture based on chapter 1, and we will continue this throughout the semester. Okay? So thank you for your attention. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.